Welcome back, episode 536 of the Get Paid for Your Pet podcast. Today with my special guest, Jennifer Lawyer. She is the co-founder of SoulSTR, a short-term rental management company that manages hotels, motels, and log cabins with close to 140 doors. So very sizable, and they are in the Ozark region, which is the first time since I watched the series that I actually speak with somebody who is familiar with this region. So that's one reason I'm excited to chat with Jennifer today. But also Jennifer experienced a very, very challenging situation in one of her motels, and she's going to share that story with us. It sounds like kind of a nightmare, but we'll learn all about it. Jennifer, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Sure, I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you give us a quick background? I know you were a math tutor and you're now transitioning fully into the short-term rentals, right?
Sure. Yeah,
I love math. Could you give me a quick background of your story and how you got into short-term rentals?
yeah, so I've been in education for 22 years. Was a teacher in public schools in Los Angeles, and then became a math coach in Nashville, Tennessee, and did professional development for teachers and loved that work. But my brother-in-law has slowly been working on me over the years to consider short-term rental. And so I started with one log cabin, Smoky Mountains, and then that turned into a property with 6 log cabins, which then I added a motel in the Ozarks. So I finally retired from education and said goodbye to it, and I'm really going to give short-term rental as a full-time career a go, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And your brother-in-law has been on this podcast as well.
Yes.
I have to look up the episode in a minute here so we can share. I'll share it at the end. But he's also one of our legends. He joined our STR Legends Mastermind, so I know him very well personally. Great guy, and so shout out to Francisco. I'll share the episode later. But yeah, so he kind of convinced you to get into short-term rentals. You started with one log cabin, and how did it develop into the pretty sizable portfolio that you have right now?
Sure, and I need to give Franco, my brother-in-law, a lot of credit. I've watched him over the years build his understanding of short-term rental, he and my sister Leah, they've kind of just refined over the years their idea of what guests really want. How do you make guests feel really appreciated? How do you make them feel comfortable? How do you please the guests, right? And he also really has a knack for finding properties in these cities that, I don't know, most of us probably have never heard of before. He just really has a knack for finding properties that are maybe within an hour's drive of a city that's very touristy and packed, but are maybe getting too congested. It's too hard to find lodging that's affordable. So he's just got a knack for that. I think, picking short-term rentals and what strategy he uses would be worth a whole podcast at another time. But so yeah, we started with, he encouraged me to take some of my savings and buy this little log cabin in Sevierville, Tennessee, in the Smokies, which is right near Gatlinburg, which is a huge popular touristy area in the Smokies, but it's getting too full and people are looking for something, 30 to 40 miles out of that city center. And so the log cabin did really well. My sister has a great eye for just simple design. How do you make a space comfortable and visually appealing to people? And it did really well. And he's the one who pushes us in the family. So he's like, okay, this is going well. Let's do something bigger. You love log cabins. And I don't know how he got me to do it, but I sold that little log cabin and found this little town in the Ozarks, 18 acres with 6 cabins. And so I think it was really just a process of growing in confidence. watching and listening to people who've had success and just being a student of those people, which is what I had the privilege of doing with them. And then you just get a passion for it and it keeps growing. So then after the cabins, when your profit and loss sheets look good, investors somehow find you. So an investor found me through Franco, and they were interested in the brand or the product that I was offering. And then they wanted to go 50-50 with me on a deal, a motel in the Ozarks. So that's the best way for me to just describe the journey to now me being able to walk away from a career that I loved to do this full time. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very typical. There's very few people who one day woke up and thought, you know what, I'm going to build a short-term rental business, right? It's almost always, you kind of coincidentally kind of roll into it and see the opportunity, start enjoying it, and then the rest is history. So I want to go into the story of what happened at one of your motels, and I know it must have been like very stressful, but can you tell us what happened?
Yes, if I could help anyone to maybe learn a lesson, it would be worthwhile sharing the story. So in the Ozarks, this hotel, about 30 days after purchase, and keeping in mind that we passed inspection, you hire an inspector to inspect the property in escrow, and things looked good. And 30 days later, we had a very serious carbon monoxide leak, where minutes away from potentially having people die at the scene. It was very traumatic. Luckily, the local police and EMTs and fire department were there. They were supporting us, and thank God everyone walked away from that and fully recovered. But definitely the trauma from that situation. I was there on site at the time, living there, going through that just for me, and of course the guests who were involved. It was really, really traumatic. I think what I would tell people is, when you're doing short-term rental or any kind of rental property and you're responsible for something, just because it passes inspection and things look good, that's not enough information. If I could give people any advice, I would say, spend the money, don't be cheap. Have somebody, if you have gas lines running through that property, have them checked by a commercially licensed plumber. Have the alarm systems checked, right? In a lot of states, it's not even legally required for people to have carbon monoxide, a certain number of carbon monoxide detectors. Do it anyway. Spend the money. Don't be cheap. Have someone look at your electrical. Just don't trust the inspection that you do typically in the purchase of a property. Going forward, even though it's an extra expenditure of money, you want to have that peace of mind to know that you have independent people who have gone over the property with a fine-tooth comb and made sure that it's safe, that you're even doing things that aren't legally required. It's just not worth having something happen. So that's what I would say. Spend the money. You'll sleep better. You're going to feel like you're really taking care of your guests above and beyond. Safety, 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 I would say. The hotel is back open, doing well. We're in slow season now, but we got through it. And I think another lesson I would share was really try to stick with one collection of people that support you in taking care of your properties. If it weren't for those colleagues and friends that I've made in that community, even though I'm not from that community, investing in the people in the community, getting to know them, is a really important part of short-term rental. It's like Yes, you may own properties that aren't in your city, but you have to integrate yourself into the community, get to know the people. So yes, we got through it, but wow, I just wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Yeah, no, I can totally imagine that must have been extremely stressful.
Yeah.
But it's important to share these stories because, I always feel like these are the type of things that we don't expect it's going to happen to us, right?
Yeah.
And so, one thing that you mentioned is don't just rely on what's legally what you're
That's right.
legally required to do, right? So
Yeah.
I would love to understand a little bit better of like, what can cause this type of event, and what are the actual steps that we can take to prevent this. Like, for example, I know we have carbon monoxide detectors in
Hmm.
in our units, right? But that's probably not enough, right? So
Yeah.
what are the action steps to make sure that this doesn't happen?
I think, as I said, the first thing is just hire someone who's commercially licensed and independent to check out the big systems on the property. So the electrical, the gas lines would be the first two. I would say even the third was the foundation of a property. Um, that was the one thing we did hire someone to check, but that wasn't a problem. I think the second thing is when you have on commercial properties these big commercial grade appliances. So when you have these huge dryers, these huge washers, these um, boilers, these lift stations. So when you have big commercially powered appliances, pay someone to come and to go over those with a fine tooth comb as well. Um, it can prevent accidents from happening, number one, and number two, during escrow, if you can get someone in there to help you figure out, hey, this boiler, you've only probably got 6 months of life worth, left in this appliance, or
Right.
it just helps you be prepared financially for what could happen. So those are some ideas that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and should we do this on a regular basis? Like, for example, when you bought this property, this accident happened about 30 days after you closed on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
most likely the problem already pre-existed.
I can't say,
Mm,
right. I can't say, but in escrow, just make sure that you don't rely on that generic inspection that is done. Spend the
right,
money, try to turn over every stone. More than
right.
likely, you're not going to find anything, but you're going to have peace of mind, and it's just worth it.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember when Eric and I bought our property up in Idlewild, we hired somebody
Oh,
who
yeah.
did a very, very good job. But I remember going through the reports and I was like, wow, it was like 20, 30 pages of, he went into every tiny little detail of the property, any potential, danger, all the way to like the height of the railings and like the age of certain like, you know, parts of the house. And there was so much
Mm-hmm.
detail in that report. It took us hours to like comb through it and really understand like, wait, some of the stuff I didn't even know what they were talking about. I wasn't
Yeah.
familiar with all the terms and everything. Um, and then going thinking a bit ahead of you purchase a property, like as you mentioned, it's very important to do that really really thorough inspection. After that, like, should we be inspecting our homes to that detail, like maybe every year or every 2 years? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I After that accident happened, I met with the staff and the handyman, and we said, look, and I even implemented this on the other property, the log cabin property. What are protocols that we can put in place? So yes, we have protocols about how we want properties cleaned, right? How we want the yard maintained, but let's implement some protocols around safety. So if you're in a commercial zone, the city will kind of do some of that for you. They're going to require that you have your fire extinguishers checked. They're going to, require you to have an alarm system that is connected with, police and fire department. But if you're not in a commercial zone, there really isn't anyone who is going to oversee any of these items around safety. So at the log cabins, it's like, okay, let's keep those tags marked, make sure that we have calendar reminders set for when those need to be replaced. So replacing and checking the smoke alarms and the battery in the smoke alarms. We're going to do that like every 6 months now. Things like trimming the trees. So every, maybe every quarter, you have someone walk through the property and look for potential limbs that are going to fall. So it's just being proactive and spending the money to implement protocols of safety where you're kind of just trying to be proactive and think ahead about what could go wrong. That definitely changed for me after that accident happened. So I think, again, if you're not in a commercial zone, you really have to take it upon yourself to think about safety and to put on your calendar, make yourself do it and ask the feedback and advice of the people who help you maintain or clean the property. What safety issues are you noticing? What are your suggestions? Because typically those are the people that have their hands on the property and who probably know it better than you do. So, get their advice too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's the reason it's so important to share these stories is that, in the Netherlands where I'm from, we have an expression that's, and I don't know if this is going to make sense in English, so
Okay.
we'll see. But it basically says, they drain the well after the cow has drowned, right? So
right.
is there an English expression that's like relates to that? And I'll explain
I can't think of one. But it's like, don't wait until it's too late, to take
exactly.
action, or I don't know. That's the
Yeah.
only one I can think of. Yeah, for
Because
sure.
that's typically what happens with these type of situations is disaster happens and then we take action, to to put in measures into place to prevent it in the future.
Right.
But until something actually happens, like we just don't really think of it because we don't expect it to happen to us. And I actually experienced something similar this year in 2022 when I was staying at my mom's house, and the house got fire. There was fire. Like suddenly, I smelled something, and there was a couple construction workers that were working on the I say the bathroom. They were installing a new bathroom. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and I smelled something, and I was like, "Man, these construction workers, I don't know what they're doing, but like I smell something burning." Right. And so I walked over and I opened the door and I looked at them and I was like, are you guys burning something or what's going on here? And they looked at me like, no, man, we're just like fixing the tiles, like, and I was just like, I don't think this is it. And then eventually, like I walked into the bedroom that was next to where they were doing the construction. And I opened the door and boom, there was a massive amount of smoke just came out. And so I called the fire department. Fortunately, they were there very, very quickly, and they were able to put out the fire like before it escalated. But after that experience, like I said to my mom, I was like, like we don't even have you don't even have smoke detectors in this house, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So now we installed those and like we inspected the whole house, and it turned out we had to replace some gas lines and we had to replace some other stuff. And it's just crazy, like you just don't think of that until something like that actually happens, and you get, fortunately, it was a kind of like a warning sign, and in your case too, thank God that everybody recovered.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just really important for us to with these type of things, like we have to think about what can we do to prevent these disasters before they happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I appreciate you sharing this. Are there anything else, like any other learning lessons? One thing that comes to my mind is also like this must have been a very, very stressful event for you. Like, can you tell us a little bit about like how did you get over that mentally? Like, how did you get yourself in a place where you can continue with the
Yeah.
business? And
Well, I think the first thing before I talk about the trauma of it, by that time I had pretty much exited education. And so if I had still been in my previous career while trying to do short-term rentals and not really being available 110% to care for and manage them, I don't think I could have recovered. And I think all of that investment of money would have been lost and it would have been a disaster. So I think, if you can, even if you have to, live on ramen for a bit, if you're going to do short-term rental on even on a larger scale, just be committed to making it your career, because when things happen, you've got to be able to quickly spring into action and manage it. I think for getting over that situation, it made me think about, like with short-term rental, especially with a commercial property, a larger property, it's a huge responsibility because you're, people's safety is in your hands, right? And we can't, as I said, the city helps you with some of it, but not all of it. Maybe you have a great inspector in town, maybe you don't. So I think it's kind of, it's a heavy weight. I think I take it very seriously now, having been through that. I think the only thing that got me through was, after that accident, the press was kind of hounding me. It was exhausting. So just leaning on friends. I had a friend leave her child's piano recital and drove all the way to the Ozarks to just take me and get me out of town, right? So the friends and family that you can lean on. I think if I hadn't had such strong connections and relationships with people in that community, that I didn't, people who helped me care for the property, we'd been to dinner, we'd shared drinks together. They aren't people who, I don't see them as people who work for me. I see them as partners who help me care for a property. So those relationships with people were really important. I think just having the faith to see it through. This is not an easy business. And some of my friends even thought, are you being a little reckless? You're great at what you do. You've got this career. But as long as you have the family and friend support and you can see it through, I don't think that it would be considered reckless. But I think it was really just the support of people in the community and my family. And as I said, I think another thing is being really networking, learning from people who are doing what you're doing or more than you're doing, like your podcast. Listen to these podcasts. Go to Facebook seminars. You can learn something from everyone. So I feel like without those mentors and supports, I wouldn't have maybe handled it as maybe effectively as I did. So I think those are the things that come to mind.
yeah, no, I think you make some really good points. Like sometimes it can feel a little lonely as a short-term rental operator, and like our friends and family don't really understand necessarily what we're doing, and
Right.
it's just being able to talk with our peers and relate to each other and connect with each other is I think that's very important. So yeah, I'm grateful you're sharing this with us. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you think is important around this topic?
No, I feel like we covered, quite a bit, and I'm hoping that any of this information is helpful to other people, who are doing this, and I look forward to other people that you're interviewing to learn from them too. But no, I think that was about all I was thinking to say.
Well, and what's your what's the vision for your business? Because you guys have several motels, you have log cabins. What's where do you see this business going? I mean, you're quitting your math teaching
Yeah.
career, so where do you see
Um,
yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think what we want to focus on is we've had success, so we could say, all right, let's just keep scaling. But I think what we've decided as my brother-in-law, sister, and I, with the collection of our properties together, let's just sit with what we have and really learn more about the finer details in managing multiple properties. As I said, when you introduced, my brother-in-law, sister, and I are co-founding a company called SoulSTR. So we wanted to create a management company. And this is kind of what we're doing next. It's how do we care for and really identify our brand, right? So why have we been successful? What's working? And so we hired a company out of Cali, Colombia called Milpa Brand Kitting. So like branding, marketing. And they interviewed us, kind of asked us, what is it that you do for guests? What is it that you provide people in a short-term rental experience? What are your values? What's important to you? And they really helped us. I would recommend them to anyone. They really helped us to articulate and create kind of a brand around what it is that we're doing. So how do we effectively manage all of these properties with the same level of customer care? When we have, by the end of next year, 140 keys all across the United States. So my properties are in the Ozarks, but they have hot springs and Bangor, Maine, and there's one in Massachusetts. But how do we keep a high level of customer care with so many keys? So part of the management company is how do we bring in friends, right, or people that want to work with us to message guests when Leah and Franco are doing homework and dinner with their kids? How do we go on a family vacation and still be there for guests? Because we like to answer inquiries within 2 minutes. If we haven't answered within 2 minutes, for us, that's just a failure, right? So we're trying to build a management company around our brand to continue to provide that level of that high level of experience and customer care. So that's kind of what we're excited about, is how do you take what you built and create this brand around it. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Could you name that company again?
Yes. Milpa. So it's Milpa. And it's Milpa Brand Kitting, like branding, marketing put together, brand kitting. And I was so impressed with them and what they've put together for us. I think they even helped us to understand why we've been successful. It's almost like going to a therapist. It's like you talk and you talk and talk about your issues, what's important to you, and then they kind of walk away and synthesize it and help you to identify, okay, this is actually who you are. So it was really a cool experience.
Yeah.
But they're out of Cali in Colombia. They were fantastic.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure they're working with a company from Colombia is probably more affordable than with a local company, I imagine.
Well, I had never heard of them before. They are Franco's cousins.
Mm.
And we didn't know I didn't know them very well. Franco did. But he gave them the opportunity and they were amazing,
That's
So
awesome.
we got
Yeah.
family discount. So I can't say, I don't know about the rates. But fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very familiar with Cali. I was actually there a couple months ago, as I have a
Oh,
unit
really?
there. I have an Airbnb
Yeah.
there that I like to stay at my own Airbnb sometimes. So
Yep.
that's amazing. Well, if you ever got the chance to visit Cali, then let me know.
I was supposed to go
I'll
this year
give you a
because
family and friends discount too.
I know. Yeah. And Franco has family there, right? So we got more
Yeah, that's right.
discounts. But
Awesome. Well,
okay.
I promised I would look up the episode that your brother-in-law did with me, and it's actually episode number 468. And the title is How to Buy Rundown Motels and Convert Them into Airbnbs. So if you want to check out Jennifer's brother-in-law and the business partner, check out episode 468. All right. Well, with that, Jennifer, I want to thank you for joining the show here, and very happy to hear that this traumatic event, that it turned out well. Everybody recovered, and I think it's, as I said, I think it's really important to share these stories so that we can if we can prevent one similar event in the future, then that's totally worth it. So I appreciate your time, and yeah, maybe in the future we'll get together in Cali.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. We'll share tequila.
That's right.
Thanks, Jasper. Thanks for having
Jennifer.
me on. All right.
And thanks
Talk to you later.
Thanks for everybody who is listening. And of course, on Friday, we'll be back with another episode. So have a great week and see you soon.